Welcome to the Making of Me podcast, where we explore the stories, experience, and challenges that shape us into who we have become. Our today's guest is Joe Patneaude, our executive coach and the creator of Start Scalability, our mentor with over 25 years in financial service, from rising from the mailroom to the C-suite. Joe help our leaders grow smarter, simplify complexity, and scale without burnout. Once again, it's really a pleasure having you on the show, Joe.
It's great to be here.
Yeah, thank you. So, Joe, what were some of the experiences or challenges that shape you into who you have become today?
That's quite a long list. So, as we talk about that, I think, really just the experience as a whole.
Yeah,
So, I started my career in a very white collar world that, usually requires all kinds of degrees and
yeah,
education. And I didn't have any of that. So, I started literally doing the grunt work, in the mailroom. And I got to see how leadership decisions impacted people at every level. And I spent a lot of my career, as probably a lot of your listeners have so far, being told that I couldn't do it because I didn't have the right background or I didn't come from the right type of industry prior to this. I always worked in factories and landscaping and things like that. I was a blue collar guy for my younger life. And so those experiences and being told I couldn't do it, and I even had people tell me I wasn't smart enough to do it, proving them wrong was a big
yeah,
motivator. But it also gave me a unique perspective to see how decisions really impact all the way down to the very bottom of the hierarchy.
yeah. Amazing, amazing. I think it's really lovely, especially when you make reference to the fact that you started out without degree and a whole lot of persons, even if they have degree, they still have that limiting mindset. And I'm glad we are actually more like diving into this particular conversation. So, why do many leaders feel overwhelmed as their business grow?
So I think a lot of the feelings of being overwhelmed come from a misalignment
Yeah,
of why they started their business or why they got into a leadership role if it's not their business compared to what they're trying to get out of it. So as leaders, we naturally are bombarded with information about how we have to, get more results all the time. We have to grow, we have to grow, we have to grow. And what happens is we start inflating our business instead of scaling it. We just keep adding more without asking if it's adding
yeah,
more value to our values. And so once you start having that misalignment of why you're doing it and you start focusing on some other arbitrary goal from outside pressures, that's a really big part of why people start feeling overwhelmed. They feel like they're working more and they're getting less out of it all the time. And then they start to resent their teams, they start to resent the tools that they're paying for and everything else because they have to have a target for that anger and frustration. But all that does is continue to snowball. So a lot of that can be solved by just going back to the basics. Look at the foundation of why you do what you do.
yeah.
And then start aligning the actions that you take and that you expect your team to take with those values. And that can reduce a great deal of stress. And with most people, it actually reduces a lot of the commitments they have to make to their business to get more results.
Amazing, amazing. Going back out to the root, how you actually get started again. Yeah, that's really amazing. Before we dive deeper, more like rising from the mailroom to the C-suite, must has been more like a whole lot of journey behind the scene, especially being that you actually work on construction site and having to come to this particular area where it demand a whole lot of certification, and even with certification, it demand a whole lot of confidence and everything. How was the journey like for you, and how were you able to skate through, and what mindset did you have during this period?
So I think if I had to describe that journey, I would say, first of all, be ready to make mistakes. You know what? I've made a lot of them over the years. We could have some good laughs, but that would take us hours
Yeah,
to talk about all my mistakes. But you learn from it, right? And I think that's what's important. But the one thing I think that drove me to go from literally being in the mailroom to getting to be an admin position to then promoted to customer service and and so on and so forth and eventually getting into senior leadership and then the C-suite roles over the course of 10, 15 years before I spent the latter
yeah.
part of my career all in high level C-suite, the one thing that drove me more than anything was curiosity.
Oh,
I was always the person saying, even if it wasn't my job, I was talking to other people saying, well, why do we do that? Why does the company do
hmm.
that? Why do you do that in your job? I was learning as much as I could about other people's jobs, even jobs that I never took, only because I was curious to a point where you might even call me nosy. But then I knew how to talk about it and I knew how to say, I want to try this. And then I knew what I wanted to try as well. I knew what jobs I
Yeah.
wanted to try next.
Yeah.
So
Amazing.
never lose that curiosity. I still use it as a coach. I mean, that's a big part of what I do
Yeah.
is dive into people's businesses and ask
Wow,
questions.
that's really lovely because I think for me, I've actually seen curiosity over time as a language that the whole world understands, being that it has its own energy. And even if they don't want to share, they can't just resist the person who is so curious and really, really wants to know. And it's really amazing. And also being that in a corporate world where there are a whole lot of protocols to get out to follow, even if you're asking this question, assuming those roles is a different thing. How was it like more like when they were actually more like you were able to test out some of those couples of things? Was there not any limitation in terms of then saying that you don't have this certification, we will give you this opportunity? How were you able to kind of migrate from one level to the other without having, sometimes they want the certification for you to have it. How were you able to kind of get it along the way?
So let's see here. How can I best answer that? Well, again, I think the curiosity is one thing, but as far as the satisfaction, I will tell you, I was scared most of my career. Okay, I would love to tell you that everything was rewarding and perfect along the way, but it really wasn't. But with asking questions like I did, you end up asking questions of people in leadership roles too, and they start seeing it, and they start coming to you and saying, "Hey, do you want to give this a shot? We think you have potential." And the one thing you do is you keep a straight face, and you're like, "Yeah, that sounds great." And in the background, you're really in your head going, "Goodness, what do I do? What if I've oversold myself?" You spend a lot of your career being terrified,
Hmm.
okay? But it's terrified in a good way because you're scared, but that's going to drive you to perform because it's going to make you learn even more. And I think the satisfaction for me really has come in looking back. Okay, like when I look back at it, some of the things I was most terrified of trying are the things that got me to being in C suite roles, owning multiple companies, selling
Hmm.
companies, now being a coach and helping other people do the same thing. It's all been based on being curious and being okay to be afraid. If I could just drop one more thing, Arl, that I think is relevant here, naturally, I'm actually a very introverted person. I was painfully shy when I was younger. That's
Yeah.
why a lot of this industry was so hard. And even naturally now, I'm a little shy around people I don't know. But that fear is what drives me to help other people because I know there's other people like me. And now that I've overcome a lot of that, I want to help other
Hmm.
people.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. So when you're being handed those jobs that you're so afraid of, what were some of the experience you had that was more like the toughest, uh, more like aspect of it, especially more like when you're handed this particular job? Maybe just looking back, what has been more like the toughest aspect of it for you to actually overcome? Maybe particular roles and owing to you being handed or you didn't know what to do. How were you able to overcome those particular points in time? Is there any experience like that?
Definitely asking a lot of questions and not being afraid to go out and look for the answers,
Mm.
right? So, I think one of my favorite stories on this is I was given a role in a firm that I worked with. This was before I was really into senior
Yeah.
leadership, but it was a project management role. Now, at the time, I had no formal project management training at all. I was just organized.
Yeah.
And the firm came to me, the senior vice president of the firm came to me and said, I think you can do this. I'm going to be firing the person that's doing it today, and I want you to step in my
Ooh.
place. And I went, okay, like, I give it a shot. Well, I spent a lot of time on phone calls calling, business partners that the firm worked with, vendors, things like that. But I spent a lot of time just asking questions and saying, even to the senior vice president that gave me the opportunity, hey, there was more than one time where I went to her and said, hey, here's the thing. I think this is what needs to happen next. This is my plan for doing it. Do you have any advice for me?
Mm.
And a good leader is going to tell you, yes, you're on the right track or no, you're not. And if you're working for a bad leader, sometimes you have to just make the best of it. But that curiosity is, again, the same sort of concept
Mm.
that goes throughout, right? By being curious and being willing to ask questions and not being afraid to look silly,
Mm.
okay? There's going to be moments where you have to
Yeah,
say, look, you have more experience
it's
here.
true.
What can I do?
I think it's really lovely, especially as we just have this conversation, just dawning on me that, which asking the right question could be a skill now in this new age of us, being that a whole lot of persons are afraid of, asking tough questions. And I think it's really key of being that not, even if you actually more like go to the school and get the certification and everything, there's a limit to what certificate you can take it to, except you are willing to ask. Yeah, and be fooled for once by asking. Because once you get to know the answers, you're already on the right track. And that's really amazing. So what are some of
Yeah, and the other thing,
yeah,
if I could just drop one more
yeah.
thing there, the other thing I would add to that is sometimes the best thing you can say to a leader is, what else should I be asking?
Mm,
So, if you go to somebody and you say, look, they know you're new in the role. If you go to your leader and say, look, this is my plan, this is what I'm asking, these are the people I'm asking it of. Is there anything you can see that I should
mm,
also be asking? Or what else would you recommend? Because here's the deal, that's going to show your leader that you're working for,
yeah,
that you're already thinking, and that you're ready to move forward. But it's also going to show that you're still open to learning and that you respect their input. Now, on the back end, what it does is it also makes it really hard for the leader to say that you didn't do your job if you're asking them how to do the
yeah,
job. So you're sort of setting yourself up for success by doing that.
yeah, so true.
And I think that's important.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. So what are some of the warning signs of a business is scaling in the wrong way?
So there's a few. One, the frustration that you mentioned at the very beginning of our call,
Yeah.
right? When people are feeling overwhelmed and frustrated and feeling like the tool they bought isn't working or that their staff isn't doing what they should be, and they're finding all these reasons to be unhappy with their business and the results, that's a big part of it. Like, that's a very big red flag. Earlier warning signs are going to be things about financials, right? Like, watch your financials. If you see that you're adding triple the resources but not getting triple the profit or more, there's a problem, right? Like, when you start adding a lot of resources and things are scaling at the same level, all you're doing is inflating your business. A quick example. I worked with a investment advisory firm once that had about 6 people on staff, and they were trying to double their assets under management, double the number of households they worked with, that kind of thing. And what they did was they doubled their staff. So they doubled all their costs too. So the profitability didn't go up at an exponential level. And that's inflating your business. Scaling your business is being able to take, 6 people on your staff, and instead of having them support 500 households, be able to support 1,000 households with only maybe 6 or 7
Yeah.
people. Adding less to get
Yeah.
more, that's scaling. Adding more to get more is just inflation. Now, other warning signs you can watch for is, watch your people. Talk to your staff. If your staff is starting to sort of lose their energy, they're not bringing you ideas anymore, they're just agreeing with what you say. And if people start leaving the company, that's a little further down the road. But there's earlier warning signs. If somebody just shows up and smiles and says, yep, whatever you say, boss, and they never bring you any ideas, they never ask questions, and they never engage with you. Some people look at it as confrontational. I don't. I look at it as, that's an engaged staff member. But when your staff starts to disengage, that's one of your first warning signs before you ever even see the profitability issues, that people are starting to disconnect. And if your staff's starting to disconnect, you're going to start to disconnect. You're going to feel overwhelmed, and your business is going to fail.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. Yeah, adding more to get more is inflation, and adding less to get more is profit. Yeah, that's really amazing. And just speak volumes. So yeah, it should be the other way: adding less and getting more profits, other than adding more, doubling it, and at the end of the day, the profit is not kind of commensurate. Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. So how can leaders build team that reduce stress instead of add to it?
Well, the first thing with building a team that's going to reduce the stress that add to it is making sure that you get people that are in the right spot and they're the right people. Okay, not everybody's the right fit for every company, and you have to look at your value system for that. Like, what is your why? Right? Why do you do what you do? What are you trying to accomplish with your business beyond profitability? What impact are you trying to have on people's lives or the community or what have you? You've got to get people in that have the right value system first. And then skills are second, because a lot of skills can be taught. So we can have a whole conversation about what can and can't be taught. But first, getting the people in, right? Second is getting them to a point where you can trust them to do your job, and then delegating to them effectively. I see a lot of leaders that just assign tasks and think that that's delegation. But delegation isn't just assigning tasks, it's also assigning authority and decision-making capabilities. And that's where a lot of people struggle. They will expect their staff to do a task, and they'll expect them to do it exactly the way they would. But they won't give them a decision-making framework to use so that they can delegate the authority. And then what happens is all the decisions come back to the owner. or the leader. And they all have to, run the staff has to run everything by them. By doing that, you're going to demoralize your staff, you're going to disengage your staff, and no matter how good your hiring process is, people are going to end up leaving because they don't feel
Yeah.
respected. So avoiding all of that is really the big thing. But to get there, you got to start in the right spot. You got to have people that are there for the reasons that you also are there.
Amazing, amazing. And I think that is the reason why a whole lot of our big company that I read about, it seems the owner of the business is the first person who actually more like hire the host of the set of person who actually started with the being that, yeah, work ethic cannot be taught. It has to be gotten right. And yeah, that's really amazing. So thanks for sharing out. So what is one simple step leader can start taking this week to start skilling smarter?
The first thing that everybody can do is sit down and just do a personal values audit.
Personal
Stop and
value.
ask yourself, why did I ever start this business? Why did I get into this role? And again, money's not the answer.
Yeah.
I want everybody to do that without thinking about the money at all. If you're going to think about the money, you have to say what you're trying to get from the money. Is it trying to provide a certain lifestyle for people who are important to you? Is it trying to make an impact in a community or a group of people? Is it to have that rewarding feeling of helping people do something successfully, whether you are an educator or a financial planner, it doesn't matter. What's your why? Why do you do it beyond the money? And if you can't think beyond the money, ask yourself what the money is meant to do for you, and that'll get you there. But do that personal values audit. That's sort of step one. And when you're done with that, look at everything that you do in a typical day and ask yourself on each task, in each meeting, in each email that you respond to in a typical day, how much of it aligns with why you're doing what you're doing. And a lot of leaders that are feeling frustrated or feel like growth might be beyond them are going to find that they're not spending their time on the stuff that means something to them, which makes it feel harder, which makes it feel more overwhelming, which increases frustration.
Amazing, amazing. I think they just speak volumes to why you are taking your personal value audit, because sometimes you don't know what you are thinking until you get to pen them down and having to dive very deep or looking at it and everything. And yeah, I think it's easier to expect what you know heartily, being that you already know what you actually want and the value that speak volume to that particular business, being that it's penned down, you can see it, you can easily point them. Other than just expecting something, you can't even put in words. Amazing, amazing. So what make a star scalability method different from traditional coaching?
So, most traditional coaching is a template that you're supposed to just drop in on the business. Most people that are in the executive coaching space are going to come in and say, look, if you follow my 10 steps, my 15 steps, my 20 steps, whatever it is, over the course of 3 months, 6 months, a year, you're going to have all these tremendous results. Look, I've been there. I've worked at companies that hired those coaches. I see what happens because I'm usually hired after one of those processes fails. Most of my clients have tried coaching and failed. And what happens is it disengages the team. It makes people feel like they're going through perfunctory, motions and just going through it to go through it. It's a waste of their time. It's a waste of their energy. Star scalability is a little different. Star scalability goes back and says, okay, let's get to the root of the problem. Let's look at the foundation that you're trying to build on first. It doesn't try to just slap a building on top of a piece of concrete. It looks at the concrete and says, hey, is this a foundation that we can build on? And it goes through your values, and it then aligns your strategy to your values, and then it aligns your team with your strategy. And once we do that, then we align all of your assets, which is everything you have operationally, intellectual property, physical assets, you name it, the intangibles, all of it. And align all of that to make sure that it's working in the most efficient way to achieve the values that you stand for. You notice I'm not talking about results yet at all, right? And then when we get to the R of STAR, we don't talk about results. We talk about reward systems, okay? We want to reward the behaviors that drive efficiency, that drive productivity, that drive the profitability. We want to create reward systems that reward the values and the activities that signify the values. When we do that, positive, profitable, exponential results are a natural byproduct, which is why we never focus on results. We focus on the behaviors that get us to the results. And that's very unique to every company. because I can't come in and use the same process that, Jeff Bezos built to use Amazon to help an insurance agent build an insurance agency. It just doesn't make sense. It's two different business models. You know what I mean?
Yeah, this is really amazing. Being that, yeah, you reward the behavior and not the result. Being that, one of the behavior is actually more like gotten right. I think it has once you get the tree right, the fruit is natural. And yeah, it's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. So, Joe, for my audience who wants to reach out to you for your coaching section and for business deal, how can they reach out to you and where's the best platform?
The easiest way to reach me is to go to my website, which is jpcoachingnow.com. And from there, you can connect with me via email, via phone, and on all the different social media platforms and that are out there. It's all right there on the website. And the easiest way is, again, just go to jpcoachingnow.com. From there, you can also see where to buy the books that I have written, see articles I've written, all that stuff is right there. So that's just the easiest way for everybody to connect with me.
Yeah, thank you so much, Joe. So, Joe, thank you. Just remind us that growth doesn't have to cost your head or your time or your peace when leaders simply align and build intentionally. Success becomes sustainable. Yeah, thank you so much for the whole lot of insight you just shared. It's a really pleasure having you on the show.
Thanks, Ara. It's been great having a conversation with you today.